All right. Peace and Black power, peace and human power, peace to the darkest minds of the light. Namaste, Hotep, Jambo, Ashe, Shalom, Assalamu alaikum. All the greetings of love and light to all of you beautiful people who are joining us today for our second episode of Sister Sit Down. We have an amazing guest today. As you see, Professor James Small, an activist. He has worked with many revolutionary of Black people, African American people. What do we call them? Do you say African American, Professor Smaller? What do you say?
Yeah, I'm not. America is a geopolitical place. We live here, we work here, we vote here,
Okay.
we pay taxes here, and Africa is our race, our culture, our history, our ancestry. It is not a contradiction to call yourself African American. It explains your reality at this moment in time and space.
Thank you. He's worked with Malcolm X. He is an Ifa priest, and the list goes on and on. So the professor asked me, don't take too long on the intro, but he also has done much consultations for producers and directors of movies, especially movies that have to do with our history. The one of the latest movies you worked on was The Godfather of
Harlem.
Harlem. Thank you.
We're actually working on the third year now. We're on the last episode for this third year installment, which will start in January.
Beautiful. And he's going to sit with us today, and we are going to review The Woman King, which is a beautiful film. We just talked about it. Before we do, though, I just want to go do our round. I'll start with Professor Small this time, with the guest this time. I'm sipping on some regular orange pekoe tea. I love this stuff. But what are you sipping on, Professor?
Cold water.
That's the best thing for you, the best thing for you. Let's see, Naphtali, go ahead and introduce yourself and let us know what you're sipping on, Queen. Your mic is muted. Okay, having some audio issues. We can't hear you. I'm going to come back to you. In Motion, what are you sipping on? Introduce yourself and let us know.
Hi, good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
I am a mental health counselor, and I am sipping on some nice matcha green tea with a water backup.
Awesome. Okay, Dulcinea, what are you sipping on? Introduce yourself and let us know.
Yes, shalom, everyone. My name is Dulcinea. And peace, and it's a pleasure speaking with you, Professor James Small. I'm a huge fan of yours and all your work and everything that you do is teaching us. And actually, I'm sipping on kombucha for tonight, so it's a peach believer favorite.
Oh, peach, yummy. That's nice. And we'll go back to Naphtali. How's your audio, sis? Is it, Queen? Is it good? Try it. No. Go out. Just go out. Okay. Go out and try to come back. We're here for you. Go ahead and maybe try to come back in. Robin, Freedom, what are you sipping on? Introduce yourself and let us know.
I am Freedom, always revolutionist. I am sipping on some mango honey tea with lemon and lime in it.
Yummy. All right. We will. Naphtali's going to keep us on the edge of our seats, and we'll find out from her soon. I want to jump right into talking about this movie. We were talking about it backstage. I had to go live because a lot was said. Let's listen. Let's give the floor to our elder, our leader, the Ifa priest, historian, Professor James Small. Tell us about the movie.
You know, we had a discussion a few days ago, but none of us had seen the movie. So I was talking about all the technical things about movie making and the kind of intent that white writers have brought to the table and how Black actors have to try and get control of the white content to change white intent, you know? And a lot of times we don't realize that. And I've learned that over the years. I go like, we sometimes blame the Black actors for something somebody else has written when they've done the best they can to change that intent. And so I think it's important that we understand that concept, that all content has intent. And then we come into the game. We didn't put up the money, so we can't control certain things. We didn't write the script, but what we bring to the table is an authenticity, what I call an African integrity, that allow us to take their content and shift their intents in order to give a message or tell a story that's going to affect the minds of what we call the socialization of other human beings. And I knew I needed to watch this one because something in my spirit said, don't try to just go out there and based on what others have told you. And I did send 3 people to watch it for me because I don't like spending my money for stuff if it ain't cool, right? But the spirit just got on me this morning and says, you got to go yourself.
Wow.
And because I love Viola Davis and I love the work that she's done. And she reminds me a lot of my mother. You know, when they did The Help, you know, I grew up on a plantation in the South. And the same uniform they wore, my mother and my aunties and my cousins, they all wore those uniforms going to and from work for these white folks and in their kitchens and in their house. And I was a shoe shine boy in the very rich Vanderbilt homes. And then I became a pantry boy in the Vanderbilt's home, and I became a butler. So I have a kind of an experience that I see. When I see it, I'm feeling it because we lived through it on that plantation. And so when I watched in that role, it just did stuff to me because it's something I lived through. And I watched in this role, you know, I've been to Benin multiple times. And the palace in which they did a lot of the filming, I've been in that palace multiple times. And the story of the people of Benin, I've heard it from the kings, from the queen mothers. I sat at the feet of the voodoo Pope in his palace. You know, I've been in the palace of Python, and I've got pictures with python snakes all around my neck and on my shoulders. And I love Benin. And, you know, Benin today incorporates what was Dahomey of yesterday. The ancient Dahomey wasn't as large as today's Benin. But the kingdom of Dahomey is an extraordinary historical kingdom. And what we don't have to be ashamed of or even feel bad about, that some Africans did engage in the slave trade. That's real. We'd be fools not to admit to that. Just like we have people who look like us killing one another on the streets every day. 99% of us are not doing that, but there's a percent of that 1% that is doing that, and it's impacting the 99%. We have people in our community selling drugs. People that look just like us selling drugs to us. They represent only 1% of a 1%, but they're affecting the lives of the 99%. Well, that same thing happened in history. You get greedy people everywhere you go. And all the time it wasn't greed. So there's a scenario people need to understand. When white people landed with their cannons and their guns on the shores of West Africa, we had neither cannon nor guns nor gunpowder. And most of our shoreline kingdoms were defeated by them militarily, straight out. And it is many of those kingdoms that they made their vassal states to help them in the slave trade under duress with guns to their head. That's historically accurate. You can go and check that out all along the history of the coast of West Africa. So don't try to say some brothers were sitting there waiting and say, look, we got some black folks up here in the kitchen we want to sell, right? That's not what was going on. There were wars going on. And by the time, I think, let me look at it. I try to always keep because I believe in timelines. Always when you talk about history, try to put up a timeline. And the period that we're talking about, that Dahomey was involved in slave trading. And I don't want to even say slave trading because they knew nothing about what happened on the ship. They knew nothing about chattel slavery in the West. They were involved in selling their prisoners of war in their wars with Oyo and the other great states they were up against. And that was something that was not unusual in Africa. Because servitude in Africa was not chattel slavery. We need to get that straight first. Because all Africans had slaves too. No, they didn't. You can't find a word in any one of those languages that has to do with slavery that takes away the identity of a person, takes away the humanity of a person, takes away the spirituality of a person. Not a single kingdom in Africa can you find such an experience taking place under African laws. But by the time the Portuguese would get to West Africa, we've got 1,500 years of Turkish, Arabic, Eastern European Serbic slave trading and capturing and marauding across North Africa, East Africa, coming into Central and bordering on West Africa. We don't talk about that 1,500 years of the Islamic slave trade. And the Western European Christians, starting with the Portuguese, taps into that system. And it's something that we need to study because we'll have a different perspective on what happens. Why did we go towards the Western European Christian so heavily? Because we had a 1,500 years of an Islamic Turkish, the Ottoman Turks takes over the Islamic Empire in the 9th century. The Abbas takes it over in the 8th century from the Umayyads, who may have been halfway decent, okay? And by the 8th century, you got African slave rebellions in the Persian Gulf under the title of the Rebellion of the Zanj. And Zanji was the Arab word, I'm sorry, but for Black people. So throughout our history with this so-called transatlantic slave trade, which is a misnomer, there was no transatlantic slave trade. There was a war against the continent of Africa and its people by people who practiced genocide on us and carried out crimes against humanity at a level that's difficult to even comprehend today. You're talking about hundreds of years, murdering, raping, killing, molesting, that we were being brought into slavery into the islands of the Caribbean before North America, where we lived only 5 to 10 years. They just worked us to death. And when they got some more people to work to death, then most of the young girls that was brought over here were not old ladies. They were not middle-aged ladies. These were kids between 15 and 18, and every one of them was raped on the way here. You're talking about genocide at a level people don't want to really discuss. And this is not something Africans did to Africans. This is something invaders did to Africa. And then we can come to this movie that tells a story of an African military brigade, which was a part of the army of Dahomey, with these extraordinary women fighters. I don't like that term warriors because that connotes something different. These were soldiers who came in that army not to be for prowess, but to defend their nation and the integrity of their nation. And the leadership under the woman who would become king, that's played by Sister Viola Davis, it's a movie of redemption of the state of Dahomey. Having committed the crime, not knowing the extent of the crime of slavery, that under the leadership of this woman, that whole nation gets redeemed because she flips the script, okay? And began to fight to end slavery, which was an economic phenomenon for the European, and they had pulled us into it, and began to create another economic pathway for the nation state. When she was talking about the palm oil and the other commodities that they could sell to have an economic foundation that would support a nation. And the kind of reasoning and the dialogue on why they're fighting for freedom, the concept of freedom that's constantly projected, you know, the concept of being dedicated to the protection of your nation that's being projected is just extraordinary. I've watched movies, even though I don't go to movies much now. This is the best piece I've ever seen done about Black people in the movies, bar none. You know,
even better than Roots?
I said bar none. Even though this is a fictional character, let me tell you a couple of things about Africa, and particularly that area. Women king is not an unusual phenomenon, first of all. Not queen. I didn't say women queen. I said women kings is not an unusual phenomenon in Africa. Go back to ancient Egypt and you got Hatshepsut.
Hatshepsut.
who is the
Hatshepsut.
pharaoh.
Mhm.
That's the king. But there's at least 5 known female pharaohs before Hatshepsut.
Oh,
You go
okay.
to the Congo, and you will find, we call her Queen Nzinga, but Nzinga,
Nzinga.
Angola, is a king. She ascends the throne after her brother. She's a king queen. My
Mhm.
goddaughter, Queen Diambi, right now, is the king queen of Congo. She's the king of Congo, and she's a female. And she was elected by a majority of the local kings. Because you don't just declare yourself a king in Africa. People elect you. We had democracy before we heard of these other people, you know? In Nigeria right now, there's at least 5 female kings, all right? So for people who think that's unusual, that's not unusual. What is so extraordinary, the way they moved it in this movie, is to take that general, that woman soldier, that freedom fighter, and because of her principles of freedom and fighting for freedom and abolishing self-exploitation, and make her the king in the end of the movie is extraordinary. I love that.
I love it. Yes, I love that part. Wow. Thank you so much, Professor, for the history. Now I want to get a little bit more into the movie. I was going to ask you, is Queen Naniska, I think her name was, right? Naniska. Is she, so she was a fictional character
No,
based
there
on
was a real person that fitted that role. Yes, in fiction,
Mhm.
you're going to alter the activities a little bit. You're going to embellish some stuff and add some stuff. But there was a real woman.
Yeah. Yes.
So
Yeah.
this is not a, yeah.
So jumping right in there, it's just when you say that, the real woman is like Harriet Tubman, who who didn't leave behind. She actually was a soldier in herself, right? That's an
Mhm,
Americana, hero.
mhm.
This giving up the sense of being a mother to serve the greater good. There's so much to be unpacked there, and I'm just bringing it to what we are as people in the country, and as people as as people who are
as Black women.
Black women, as Black families, as multicultural, entities. We are, it's we rewrite the script. We're going moving forward, and it was so powerful in that way that you're bringing in the woman soldier. You're bringing in that sense of strength, but there's also, which the movie did show, there's a sense of her fragility, her own sense of loneliness. That was so powerful.
Yeah, I love
But,
that part. I
but
just want to jump in and I'm going to hand it up. Professor, go ahead, please.
no, the piece where she discovered that this is her baby.
Her daughter.
This
I
little
was just
girl
going
that
to
came
talk
in
about that.
that wasn't listening to nobody, and she
Oh,
was actually seeing a mirror of herself, right?
yes.
And it turned out to really be herself.
Oh,
That
gosh.
piece is beautiful.
You
Right
just,
up to
I'm
the
getting
point where they're
goosebumps. So,
That was a very beautiful
Yes.
part. Very touching. Very
And then
touching.
the choice that the daughter makes and not
oh,
going with the young man to England,
Mm-hmm.
but
I love it.
going back home.
I
Yes.
love it.
That
Oh,
that piece was just
you know what it does for me, ladies, especially, I needed that. I needed to see this movie because it re-upped my sister, the feeling that I have for my women, the Black women sisterhood, because it's really struggling in these days. There's so much. We talked about it last weekend, but we talked about how we need to stop being against each other as women. I think whatever was going on there was 100% spiritual, because you see these rugged, strong women soldiers, but as you watch it, you see motherhood, sisterhood. That's where the fierceness came from. So for me, it was so feminine. No, even though you're seeing them beaten behind and killing, I saw so much femininity and sisterhood. So that really was refreshing for me. I had to say that. So let me hand the mic over. I could start crying right now, y'all. That movie, if you haven't seen The Woman King, Go see it. Professor Small, I want to come back to you. Y'all, sisters, you can jump in. Oh, Naphtali, your mic is okay now, right? Say something.
Yeah, I wanted to jump in. I wanted to let you guys, and I want to say a wonderful hello and shalom to you all on the panel. I am drinking a kombucha, Pure Love, with hibiscus and blood orange. Loving it.
Yummy.
Oh,
Yeah. I
that's
think someone
good.
else is drinking the kombucha as well. So shout out to
Yeah,
you.
both of them.
Kombucha. I love kombucha. But yes, I want to say, and it's great meeting you, Professor James Small. Heard a lot about you. I love the movie. I actually was a critic. I didn't even want to watch it. Nepal, thank you so much for putting it in my spirit to even go see it, because I thought they were going to showcase us as these over masculine women,
Yeah.
but there was a softness. There was like you said, the feminine. I felt the pain, the struggle. I just felt it all. It was an amazing. It was amazing. So I'm gonna go ahead and give you back the floor, but I just wanted to say that.
Professor, you were saying somebody tried to hand you some tissues in this theater?
Well, it was the young man sitting next to me. And I think it was his grandmother who was with him. And when he came in, he had on his mask and he had his hood on. And she was asking why was he being incognito. And he was like kind of like there was a part in the movie he would cover his eyes. But afterward, I asked him what he thought of it. And he said it was wonderful. The young man was about 15, 16. He said it was wonderful. I loved it. And I think the piece in it, despite you seeing these women soldiers learning, you saw the motherhood. When the young girl came in, the older sister took her under the wings and became the big sister. You saw the sisterhood, you saw the motherhood, and it never lost what I call African femininity. That never got lost. You understand? Even though they had made this sacrifice of not having children, of not getting married, because they had to defend the integrity of a nation. They never lost their womanhood. They never lost the femininity. They never lost the instinct of the mother. Because you see that all through as the young ladies are trying and the older sisters helping them get down.
Right.
That
You know, that nurturing spirit, right? They were literally the elder, the general, when the little I know the names, when she came in, she's telling her, you can't be in a partnership now, you have to be a soldier. But it wasn't from a place of, I keep hearing like, this feminist tone to it. No, it was from a place of care, because like, you need to survive. We're your family. So you need to survive. And how are you going to survive here if you're not looking into yourself and building up your own strengths, right? And so she, this character, this kid, she was an orphan. We didn't know that then, but then she started to really make herself known. And even in that the scene where she's going through those thorns, and they had to she had to prove herself. It was the last stance, and she went back for a friend, and it was beautifully written, because you had these very prominent, Viola Davis, her role. They're like, no, what is she doing? But she went back for her friend and still won, right? And so it was, that's the nurturing. That was a brilliant scene, because she went back. It was so good. It was so good. So yes, you're absolutely right, Professor. It shows that the caring, the dimensional spirit of womanhood, right?
And we need that as Black women. I mean, and we're depicted. Well, let me ask the professor this. I'm going to gauge this. I'm going to gear this toward you. What do you think about how, with movie aside, the other movies in Hollywood, I think they are depicting Black women lately?
Well, many of the scripts that we're reading, that we're seeing, is not written by us.
Right.
And where we do have our people and trying to keep a job, they're pandering to the value of another group. And so the story of the Black woman isn't being told by the Black woman, you see. And it's important that we understand that we got to get more people into these industries, and that we have to build our own industry at the same time. You got to do both at the same time. We can't wait. We've got to deal with the ones that's there, and then we have to build the Black cinema industry so that we can tell our story using the technology that the whole world is using to tell that story, because the story is really talking about your ancestry. And I thought the shrines and the way shrines were displayed, being a priest, that was just, they did it right.
Wow, I got to talk to you about that. You're an Ifa priest.
Right. When she gave the young man the Ogun statuettes, and he, when the time came, became Ogun the warrior.
Oh, please talk about that deeply. We need to hear. Give us the background on that.
Not just the warrior and iron, but Ogun represents transformation of the human character. And the concept of iron is used because iron is first a piece of rock full of all kinds of impurities. And so you have to, the blacksmith has to burn out the impurities to get to steel, so that you can make tools and pots and weaponry. So it symbolizes transformation of the character. So the young man who said, my mother told me to come back home to find myself, he was going through a transformative process. And so for her to give her the symbol of African spiritual transformation, just kind of like, I go like, whoa, somebody know what they're doing here, you know?
Yes.
And then the last piece I mentioned is in the fight with Oba, right? Viola cuts off his ears. Now, in the story of Shango, right? And in the Yoruba tradition, he has two wives, Oya and Oba. Well, he has more than two, but these two are the two principals. And in the conflict of envy, jealousy between the two, Oya and another wife convinces Oba to cut her ears off to make a special stew for Shango. And then that would allow Shango to love her, but that proved not to be true. But in the movie, she cuts Oba's ears off in that battle, where she finally deals with her rapists and gives him his reward. Right?
Wow.
So I'm saying they put so many, what I consider to be good stuff, good juju stuff up in there, you know what I'm saying? The real voodoo was happening in that theater. So I
Professor, I wanted to jump in as well into here because I didn't want to get too far from what you mentioned before, and I wanted to get your opinion on African femininity. So it was a big debate going back and forth about it being too masculine, boycotting it because we're always viewed as this. So can you break down what African femininity is and how it differs from European femininity?
Good question.
Well, my mama would tell us when we did wrong, if you did it again, you get slapped into the next century. And I thought my mama was the finest woman I ever seen. She wasn't my mama, she'd be my girlfriend, you know. And Viola is shaped like my mother, you know, and she kind of, her face reminds me of my mother, you know. They were about the same height, and both from South Carolina. So I got a special thing with Miss Davis. We get caught up into this little falsehood of goddessship that white folks have made of the white woman's anatomy as being the model for humanity. And it doesn't make any sense to me because they have no history of a goddessship. Throughout our history, the goddess is there. The very earliest stages of our history is a set. We can go back further than a set, but everybody knows a set in Kemet. And she's sitting there, right, with a throne on her head. Remember, this is a chair sitting on her head, right?
Right.
It's the symbol of the throne, but it's more than the symbol of the throne. It's the symbol of power over everything. And in Africa, as my goddaughter have taught me, who is the king of Congo, king of the Society and the Order of Leopards, Queen Diambi, King Queen Diambi, that in Africa, the woman is the power, and she gives to men the authority.
Oh,
okay.
Please say that again. Please say, Dulcinea. We talked about that. Say that again, please.
Woman in Africa is the power, and she gives the men the authority. This is
There
not
you
a
go.
competition or a demeaning of the man.
Yes.
This is giving role is peculiar responsibility based on anatomy and based on the other sciences we dealing, mind, attitude. The woman chooses the king in almost every African
Oh,
society.
this is
Who
beautiful.
gives
I'm
the
really being
the
surprised
men
here.
to enthrone and install. But she doesn't lose her power in doing that.
Mm.
And when that man that she has made king is removed for some reason, or that stool is destroyed, she steps in as king. Because when you are sitting as king in Africa or queen in Africa, you are the ancestors. You're not you anymore. When you sit on that throne, you're the ancestors of the whole group.
Mm.
That's who you are. You're not that name you had. You're not the despot we know about European kingships and queenship. That's not what African queenship is about. It's about someone being chosen by the community based on quality and attributes to represent the ancestors in communication with the community
Wow.
and to take responsibility, because the ancestors is your mother and father, you're their children. And so through that stool or that throne, responsibility is taken in their name.
Mhm.
But
Beautiful.
when the universe first decided to manifest as a human being, it manifested itself as an African woman. You can't change that. There's no science that can challenge that. Okay.
You know, I want to
Can
ask
I ask
you.
a question, please?
Yes, just I'm gonna
Go
just
ahead, go right
throw
ahead.
this out, and then you're gonna go. I'm gonna go to you, Freedom.
Mhm.
Once after Freedom asked the question, I would like for you to address this part in the movie where they spoke about the throne and how it needed the balance with the gods Maui, the twins. So if you could talk to us about that from the spiritual side, but Freedom's gonna come in and ask her question.
Maua Lisa.
Say it
Maua.
again.
The name they were using, and they use this in Benin, is one other country used Mau and Lisa.
Mau and Lisa.
One is the feminine aspect, one is the masculine aspect. And they've got to be balanced and
Beautiful.
harmony. Okay?
Okay.
And that's what they were talking about, that the man is no greater and the woman is no greater. When they work in harmony, they can alternate in each other's places as necessity dictates. If the other gets injured or the other gets damaged or the other gets removed. But if you look at the beginning, if I go back again to Aset in Kemet, and she's sitting, right? She's got the throne on her head, but look at how she's sitting. She's sitting as the throne, and Haru is sitting in her lap. He is the king sitting on the lap of the woman, which is the throne of the world. Right?
Beautiful.
And
Beautiful. Thank you.
he becomes Ra. He becomes the power. I mean, he becomes the authority in managing the affairs of state, because all the pharaohs gotta, look like Haru, but he's given that authority by the throne, which is the feminine aspect of that community.
Thank you so much for
One
breaking
more
that
piece
down.
so you can understand the sterling.
No, please, yes, we want to understand it.
So just talking about culture and spirituality, each one of you sisters represent that aspect of the divine that creates. Because God don't create nothing. You're that part of God that creates. Okay.
Thank
If
you.
you understand that, when they say Mawu Lisa, they're talking about the totality of creation itself as divinity. All right. Which then
Beautiful.
makes you a part of that divine. Right? A sister keep getting me the pronunciation Mawu Lisa.
Mawu
Lisa. But
Mawu Lisa.
we are a part of divinity as far as African culture is concerned, and African sacred science. I don't even like to use spirituality anymore because people have messed that up.
Right.
African sacred science is an understanding of cosmology, ecology, and the human being's role in that, and that relationship, right? And so when you look at the movie, they're really demonstrating African philosophy at play. and I loved it. You know,
I love the
and
movie.
you may see a few little negatives there, but I'm not going to even mention the negatives as part because it was too much positive. And
it was so good.
You know?
And you know, Freedom wants us to go. I'm gonna let you go, Freedom, and then I'm gonna come in and make another comment. Go ahead, sis. You've been waiting.
Okay.
Freedom?
I wanted to say that the part about that we were the secret weapon, that was the part that got me. When the gentleman said, you know, even this is in the trailer, when you hear the trailer, and this is what got me all excited about the movie, and he was saying our lives was in danger. Do you remember that part in the trailer before y'all seen the movie? And he said, but they don't know we have a secret weapon, and it was the women, the warriors. Do y'all remember that part in the movie?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well,
Were we?
I just love that part.
I
The part
understand
when
the concept clearly, and that's
the concept is that we are always we're the secret weapon.
If you look at what's happening in North America right now, the black male leadership were mostly assassinated in the 60s or in prison.
Right.
But right now, you're seeing the emergence of the black woman in North America across every industry.
Yeah.
From politics to corporate to television and so forth. And I don't think people really peep it. Black women right now, you are the highest, most successful element of the graduate class across this country. Right? They thought they were destroying the ascendancy of black people and how this country would be run by destroying the black male's possibility to do that. And I think they just woke up and realized, oh shit, a black vice president, a black justice of the Supreme Court, a black lady speaking for the president of the United States, black people in this corporate structure. Now, everybody isn't doing all that we think they should be doing. I understand that. But given the opportunity to change the content of somebody else's intent, I think the black women is right there at the head of the table right now, doing that right here in North America. And I'm sure.
I think they didn't expect the woman to be as powerful. They probably thought they were coming to fight some men. And when they ended up there, they ended up fighting some warriors, which were the women.
No, they thought they were coming to fight some men, and they end up.
That's what I said.
No, let me. I heard you, but
I'm
let me
sorry.
finish. But they didn't end up fighting some warriors. They end up fighting a family. Because the beautiful part about the movie is they kept the male fighters right in there. They're the musketeers. They're the ones doing the shooting. They're with their sisters throughout, but their sisters is leading this battle at this
right.
time. Okay.
So,
which I find is, you know, just speaking about the North American culture, is the fact that you have this sense of yes, in the movie, I mean, it was beautiful how you had them fighting together. Whereas the reality in the American culture, or like, you know, what we see is it's a divide and conquer, right? So it's more of you know, pitting feminism against the masculinity, and so, you know, the negatives to this movie have been you know, put out there like, oh, this is a feminist movie, you know, and they want to take men out of it. But at the same time, we're talking about a movie that is bringing, you know, the collective consciousness together. We're talking about what really is the power of the male and female together
as a unit,
making moral justice happen, right? Where, like, you know, we have to be careful because, like, now, you know, here we are on this live stream, and you have this idea of, you know, if we're talking so much about the power of the Black woman and how we are this phenomenal people, there's another side where, like, you know, the Black man is put out. He's not really, you know, you're bringing us down, but it's not about the Black woman that's bringing the man down. It's about the systematic oppression. It's about what's going to make us, just going to tear us apart. And the movie just kind of blows that out of the water. It really just kind of says, you know what? It's about us together. It's us. We are definitely, you know, it's a partnership. and it's beautiful.
Well, the history, because I love history, because Dr. Nobles taught us history erases the mystery. Throughout the history of North America, the African male and female, white histology tend to promote males, and especially in the academic environment. But in the true history of the African American community, the males and the females have been struggling. Harriet Tubman wasn't the only female fighting, okay? Sojourner Truth wasn't the only female. Ida B. Wells wasn't the only female. But even if we look at the ones we have, we realize that we are missing what's right in front of our face and has always been there. You don't have a civil rights movement without the collaboration of the Black males and females. You don't have a nationalist movement without the collaboration of Black males and females. When Garvey went to prison, he left a Black woman in charge of the UNIA, okay? When Malcolm X went to Mecca, he left a Black woman in charge of the OAAU. But we haven't told our story yet. We don't know our history, you see. If you really talk about the busings in the South during the Civil Rights Movement, those were Black women organizing that and training those young people who went into the South. White media may have projected the Black males, but we have to know our history so we got the story right. We got the story straight.
And I love that. Can I jump in and also point something else out? In the movie, I'm going to talk about submission because we have had issues where, our women it's been said, the Black man, he's not getting respected. You women don't respect your man. And that's not something that's not happening. But what I love about the movie, because I teach about submission, and we have a lot of sisters on the panel who follow certain religions who are really radical about religions. I'm talking about Abrahamic religions, Islam, Hebrew Israelitism. So I want to talk about when the king told her, first off, the king said, this is going to be the woman king when he announced it to everybody. And so he exalted her. And then when she went to him and said, I have to go save the others, he's like, no, you will obey me. So I thought about relationships, how when women do say, okay, I'm submissive, I'm going to listen to you, you're my king. But sometimes the king, he might make some off judgments, right? I'm going to hand this over to you, Professor Small, as a Black male, a husband, a grandfather, a father. So she went ahead and went against his words. And he said when she returned victoriously, you disobey your king. That for me, I could see a whole relationship move right there. But at the end, her choice was the better choice. And she still retained that. For what I saw, she was still submissive. She knew he was the king. It didn't mean that she had to lay down and make the wrong choice. Am I on the right track?
Stop using the term submissive.
Okay, go ahead. Teach us.
It was a question of respecting an authority that you have put in place. Because remember, this king, she was the primary advisor to the king, and the king was listening to her advice. But he is the king. He is the authority that she, the power, put in place. But she went against the authority because she saw something and knew something he didn't know. And when she came back, she didn't try to rationalize. She gave up the sword. She gave it back to him. Here, take it back. But he, being the king, understanding the power that he was trying to use as an example for the entire nation, gives it back.
I love it.
She becomes the king.
Woo, that was one of my favorite parts.
And when it comes to, African Americans or Black Americans, the Blacks in the Caribbean, but anywhere in Africa today, we have to accept and understand the damage, the post-slavery trauma syndrome that we go through as a result of a genocidal program that went on for 400, 500 years, and then followed by another 100 years of that genocide called colonialism. It has caused great damage to both the male and the female. And that's why we've got to look back to Africa for models of how to rebirth ourselves how to reconstruct ourselves in the most appropriate African manner possible. And that's why history is essential and important. And even fictional piece about history, like what we saw today, when done properly, like I think this one was done like really well, it gives us some blueprints to look at, you know, and redesigning and rebirthing ourselves.
Thank you so much. You want to jump in, Naphtali?
You know, he is bringing out. So did she become the king? Is that what happened? Did she actually become the king, or what was her role?
Yes. Well, it goes, she becomes the king. She becomes the woman king. Like I said, it's not an anomaly in Africa, because the truth is the woman is the power. She gives the authority that you call the king.
So is that how it? Because they said that it hasn't been a woman king in a while, correct? So what was his role after that? Was he no longer a king?
No, they are sharing the power. They have become Mawu Lisa, the male and the female, the harmony and the balance. That's what we call Ma'at. They're sharing the running of the kingdom.
Right. Thank you. Real quickly, I want to say thank you to Wahid Abdullah for tuning in. This is an amazing stream.
How you doing, sir? That's my buddy right there.
Oh, wow. Beautiful.
We traveled to Africa together, a few times.
Oh, okay. Thank you for the super sticker and the super chat. And thank you to everyone who came over from Sonnetter, a House of Consciousness. Shout out to the family. Shout out, of course, to Sonnetter. And please don't forget to like and subscribe. We want to keep building this platform as far as this show goes, because look at we're blessed to have Professor Small. Look at the people that we bring in, the amazing elite scholarship and historians that are coming through, like Professor Small. Professor Small, I know that you have been practicing, I keep on bringing this up, Ifa for what? I had you on the show, I interviewed you. I think when you talked about your initiation, it's been for what, a decade that you've been practicing or longer?
No,
How long?
My grandmother was a root woman.
Oh, wow.
In South Carolina, among the Gullah Geechee people of coastal South Carolina, Georgetown. But when I really got introduced to the Ifa tradition that's coming out of Nigeria, it's 1966.
Wow.
Wow. Chief Jamu, Mother KK in New York, because when Malcolm X gets assassinated, which a lot of people don't realize, a year later, I'm the guy that takes over the mosque. And I become his sister Ella's bodyguard. I become the imam of the Muslim mosque gang at age 21. And I'm a member of the OAU. And Baba Surgiman, the Yoruba community, if you listen to Malcolm, these were some of his closest allies, and they became my closest allies. No.
Okay.
Denny Zulu. Malcolm was always talking about this guy, Gus Denny Zulu. This is Nana Opari Denny Zulu, who was the chief king of the Akan nation, the Akanadi shrine out of Latte in Ghana that he brought to America. So they became my allies. And so even while I was an imam, I was also training in both the Akan tradition at the Shrine of Tigray and in the Yoruba tradition.
I was just going to ask you.
There was an occasion just before they moved to South Carolina to build the village, I think around 67 or 68, when they lost their space in 7th Avenue, I allowed them to meet in my mosque on Sundays, which made me a lot of enemies among the Muslim community.
Right. I was going to ask you about that.
So
how do you balance, like as Black people, not, excuse me, I don't mean to interrupt you. I just want to throw this in there as you flow. I don't want to break your flow too much. But, we have these Abrahamic religions that we're following traditionally. But could you talk to us about the deep-rooted African spirituality, especially Ifa, that is in us no matter where we go? Because you just said you were Muslim, but you were doing Ifa, practicing Ifa.
Well, following my lectures, going back to First World Alliance, back to the early 70s, I'm making comparison in the 70s between the 99 Pearls of Faith in Islam, 99 of the Orishas, because there's hundreds of Orishas. We tend to work with the 10 or 15 or so. The 99 of the or Bosun of the Akan, or the Loas of Budun. They're all the same things. These are concept, principles, and ideas that our ancestors were able to define in nature and define their possibility in us, and created system to develop the powers and forces of nature in the human being's character. That's what our spiritual tradition is about. What we are calling Abrahamic religions are Europeans' interpretations of fragments from the periphery of the African spiritual systems.
Right.
And philosophical, which became theological guidance for themselves. And because of the war we had, where we were captured by them, we were forced into these traditions as interpreted by them. But if you look at the Black church in America, really look at it, it's not the white church. It's not at all the white church. If you don't believe me, go into any white Baptist church, spend a couple of Sundays, and then go to a Black Baptist church and spend a couple of, and you realize they're both Christians, they're both Baptists, but they're in completely different value worlds. Because what the African did with the European interpretation of African spirituality that became the Christian church, we flipped that shit in America, back to Black. But what has happened with us not being in control of our own history, we have not been able to explain to ourselves what we've been doing here to survive. And we need to have a better job at interpreting and telling our story for ourselves, about ourselves. Otherwise, we're going to miss the boat. We won't understand what the Eastern Stars are. We won't understand what the Daughters of Ruth are. We don't want to understand what the Daughters of Kent is, or the Daughters of Isis are. These are female secret societies that work right along with the Black secret societies in running the Black church from the end of enslaved chattel slavery to now.
So when in Haiti, on the island of Hispaniola with the Dominican Republic, and then we have Haiti, that's very obvious with Catholicism, how they flipped so much of the Catholicism and mixed in the African
here too. We just don't know how we did it. So we need to study our history. You'd be surprised how little we know about our history, those of us who are African Americans, because we have never really had the chance. We got a school system that we're trying to work with, and it's been in opposition to us telling our own stories to ourselves from its inception. We've managed to do it to a great deal, because you won't get a Boule. I mean, there was a moment I thought the Boule was totally an enemy, but when you studied the Boule, you realize that's not our enemy. You may have some negative brothers and sisters up in there. Okay, that comes with anything you bring forward. Or you look at Prince Hall Masons. I'm a Prince Hall Mason. I'm still a Yoruba priest, okay? And I've been in Prince Hall over 30-something years. And I understand that it did not come as an enemy to Black people. It came as a liberating instrument to Black people, using the only institution available for the liberating process. Well, the Black church was the only sanctuary we had. We couldn't build a mosque, they'd have burnt it down. We couldn't build a Yoruba temple, they would burn it down. But we could go into Black church and take our Yoruba in there, take our African brand of Islam in, and we could mix our little brew and produce the Black church. Now, some things have gone astray, but the sororities and fraternities that he developed at the beginning of the 20th century and the colleges across America wasn't started to mislead, misuse, or be bourgeois elements over Black people. They were created to create a leadership, ethical, moral direction for Black people. Now, have some of it lost its course? Yeah. But what should we do? Go in and correct it. Go in and fix it. But you can't fix it if you don't know your history and your culture and your values.
I wanted to jump in because, Queen, you brought up Haiti, and I definitely wanted to bring up the revolution and just talk to you about like how they utilized Ifa and Yoruba and holistic principles of man, woman, and child and they were able to stomp out the French when it was so little of them compared with Dessalines, Marie Claire Felicité, and I don't want to butcher his Dahomey adopted mom. But can you say a little bit about that history and how can we tap into that history today?
Well, it's deeper than that. I have a friend. Some of you may know Ezele Danto.
Yes, I love her. We interviewed her, and I'd love to see her again. You know, I need her here.
She's an extraordinary researcher.
Amazing.
She was telling me about this group called the Dadas. All right, who are the Dadas? This just blew my mind. And this thing, this movie we just saw, just made it broader. The Dadas were the sisters who was too old to be sexually abused anymore. They were too old to work in the fields anymore. And so the Catholic Church sought to use them to convert the young female minds to Catholicism and European value system. Well, these ladies, these elders who were the Dadas, were the women who trained the women that began to lead the Haitian Revolution. And most of the women that they trained end up marrying Toussaint, Dessalines, other generals, and became generals and warriors themselves. And so this feminine factor, you see, as the king, ain't no stranger to African leadership. The way white folks play with gender, we didn't view gender in that way.
Okay.
And so we have to take a second look when they talk about feminism. When we talk about feminism, are we saying the same things? And in most instances, we're not saying the same thing. You know, when I got married, right? And even when I had girlfriends, because that's what I was taught back in those woods, I couldn't give a commitment till I took them to my mama. You know?
Right.
And I remember one of the sisters, we didn't get married, but I went to a family and said, could she go to New York and spend the summer with my mother? You know, I can't, we had already started with the preacher, but I can't make the final commitment until my mama say, it's a go. And the woman I've been married to for 51 years, I had to bring her home to my mama and my daddy. All right.
That's beautiful. That's how it should be.
My grandmother took her first bus trip to New York to come to meet the young lady. Mama was a little old country woman that couldn't read or write, but she weren't going to let her boy marry this woman. Obviously, he's so in love with, unless she came and did an interview. She came and interviewed two other women. The second one is the one I got married to. Because that concept of this African woman is in every thread of African life as a king. When we use the concept of king, meaning an authority over the decision a society undertakes. And a family is an element of the society who those decisions affect. You know, the value system is replicated on each level of the social order.
Awesome. I was going to ask you about, for those out there who don't know the link and the history, the people of Haiti, the people of the island of Hispaniola, they are linked to, obviously, the Dahomey, correct? I mean, as far as
some of them are. They came from Congo. They came from Angola. They came from Dahomey. They came from what is now we call Ghana and what we call Nigeria, and probably some other places. Like we never think of the East Coast, but Madagascar and Malawi, the Portuguese was already there by the 1600s, and they bringing us from the East Coast, but we never talk about those people. But they make up a part of that population that we call Haitian. Plus, there are Black people already there before Columbus comes. We think of the Tainos, who have, you know, some Asiatic blood and an Asiatic mixture with the Blacks who were there, but there were also a Black population who was there. Haiti is the real name of the island. That was their name for their land before any white people came. You know? So there's a whole story that we need to understand. But that's true for the entire Americas. There were Black people here when the Europeans came. there were black people here when the Asiatic crossed the Bering Straits. And there was an admixture of us with the Asiatics before the European came. And some people deal with this. LaRon Bennett deals with it in his book, Shaping a Black America, the chapter on the black and the red. Not Michael Imhotep, the other Imhotep brother, has written a fantastic piece on the first Americans were blacks. And we had been migrating all over the world for hundreds of thousands of years before we bumped into the people out of the ice, you know? What we're really dealing with here is the value system of groups of human beings, all right? We have a value system based on nurturing and rebirthing nature and cosmology and having in harmony with the human nature and cosmology. That's the three. The Europeans that we've met, I don't know where they start, how they start. There's all kinds of science and other stuff trying to really work that out. But they went at war with nature, and they're still at war with nature. And we're an element in nature, and they're at war with us because we're the closest element to them because we're humans like them, seemingly. And so they're at war with the rest of nature. They're at war with us as an element in nature, you know. So
What about
poisoning the water is no problem. Poisoning the air is no problem. Killing off the animals, destroying the forest. No other culture went at war with nature like that ever in the history of the world that we know of.
right? I think about the movie. I'm getting a little emotional right now. I mean, the ending is so beautiful, but then when you think about reality, like the destruction of the colonizer and the slave trader, that's what made me cry. And I'm even feeling emotional right now, just knowing, even though that was such a beautiful scene and it was so inspiring and there was that balance, but then we know what happens. And so talk to us about
So do we really know what happened? Do we know
in
that
history.
over
Something that I was wondering as
300,000?
well.
Let me just tell you this piece. See, sometimes we miss stuff when we don't know history. Over 300,000 Africans in the United States of America fought in the U.S. Civil War. Behind the lines, we can add almost another 500,000. We participated in killing millions of our enemy. But do we ever think of that? Because we don't study the history. Back up, let me say it again. Over 300,000 of us wore the uniform of the North during the Civil War. Another 500,000 of us are working for the Union Army behind the lines, sabotaging and just working, feeding them, and all the other things. And we saw the death of millions of white Americans who had enslaved us.
I see.
You didn't think we fought back? You didn't think we fought back? You didn't think our fighting had an effect on changing the dynamics of history? Look at it.
Beautiful point. Thank you, Professor. Thank you. Wow, that is a lot of almost 1 million Africans fought in the Civil War. That's amazing information. Go ahead, Natalie.
I just wanted to say this. So how accurate was that ending? Because when you look at history, they try to make it like the English were the ones that ended the slave trade with them. Like they stopped.
Yeah.
So, and I know that the victor gets to tell the tale, but how accurate is that? Because they're trying to say that if it wasn't for them ending slavery in England, they still would have been selling our people essentially.
No, I heard that woman and her filthy little mouth, and I wish she would debate me. I would go on anybody's show and I wouldn't charge anything, and I'd whip her little tail in the ground where she belonged. To be that obstinate when you've committed genocide over hundreds of years, when you're wallowing in the wealth that come from the blood of an innocent people, and you dare take that position. She would not take that position towards the Jews as regard the Holocaust in Germany, because she would never be able to walk the streets again, wherever streets she walks. But we need to know our own history. Wilberforce, who they like to praise in the UK, who was fighting this thing against slavery. He wasn't doing it for the humanity of the African. Two things is developing as a result of the enslavement of Africa. First, we talk about the Africans enslaved in the Western Hemisphere. Nobody talks about the millions of us enslaved in Europe. England being one of those places. Okay. What had begun to occur is the rebellions all over the world. They did not want that to happen in England because they were beginning, thanks to the wealth that they got from us, to move into what got to be known as the Industrial Revolution. But they still need a labor force. So they saw another labor force in the poor Irish and Scots who they had conquered. Remember, the Anglo-Saxons are Germans who invade these islands that we call the UK today, right? And so they changed slave labor for chattel, for wage slavery, because it was easier to manage. You didn't have to worry about the rebellion, and it wasn't the race question to deal with. That was one piece that was happening in England. But when Nat Turner, with all the rebellions, people, we talk about rebellions and revolutions in another place. In the United States of America, we had on record more than 300 plus rebellions. The one that scared them most was the Nat Turner rebellion. Look at the change of laws on the books. The one that scared them at first was the Stoner rebellion, but instead of 1721 or so. And so they changed all the laws then. Like, listen, we better come up with some laws to contain these people or we're going to be in trouble. The Nat Turner rebellion, following, then you follow about Denmark, Vesey, and the other one, led directly to the Civil War, in the United States. It wasn't about them trying to save us. It was trying to figure out how can we keep this wealth together without one day getting burnt out completely by these black folks the way they did them in Haiti. Okay? So we've got to find a way to resolve this problem. So how can we dismantle chattel slavery and still keep them enslaved? Because though chattel slavery, what we talk about the chains, ended in 1865, what we call Jim Crow is a sophisticated model of slavery that lasted until the revolution led by Dr. King and the others, which they don't want to call a revolution. But that was a revolution. It changed the dynamics of the government of the United States with the Civil Rights Bill and the Voters' Rights Bill. It changed their constitution in such a way no war had done it to any government before. But it depends on who's doing the analysis. And then once the change come, how well did we take advantage of those changes? And we need to study that now. And that's where the new Jim Crow comes in. We really need to relook this whole thing. But don't think we didn't wage a fierce war that forced them to end slavery. They weren't interested in ending slavery. First, they were saying, okay, let's send them back to Africa. All right? Because if we don't, eventually they will overthrow us. So you had the movement into Sierra Leone. Then you have the movement first into Liberia, then Sierra Leone. Then Lincoln said, let's send them all to Mexico. The Mexicans said, we got enough problem with the ones that's already here. And so they came up, and it's a good thing to study. Remember Rutherford B. Hayes? He was the president that destroyed Reconstruction. He pulled the troops out of the South and allowed the Confederate Army to come back in and run the governments in the South and re-enslave us and sharecropping and that whole system of slavery that lasted until now. But that same Rutherford B. Hayes becomes the chairman of a conference called the Mohawk Education Conference up in upstate New York. I think the Presbyterian Church or somebody put it on, or the Anglican Church, where they were trying to put together the educational process they would use to keep us in check. So they never gave up on enslaving us, not even now. This whole thing of felonizing Black men and now felonizing Black women. Because when you get a felony, according to the 13th Amendment, I have the right to enslave you. In the same way chattel slavery existed. We don't think about it, but they know what the hell they're doing. I can take away all of your freedoms and all of your rights as a citizen of the United States if you have a felony. So then my job to give to my policemen is to felonize as many of them as you can. You move them up the voters' roll. You don't have to give them jobs. You remove them from being a competitor in the economic system, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
So my question to you, Professor, with that understanding, so we do know that they have kept us enslaved, right? You know, like you said, with the 13th Amendment, and with the prison system and everything else, Jim Crow. But when did the Dahomey stop selling? When did they stop selling? You know, the selling the captives or selling their own people.
About the time that the movie used to set it in, what happened, I think they stopped like almost 40 years earlier than 1823. They set the time in 1823. But that whole process of the Dahomey Kingdom being involved in what they're calling the slave trade was about 40 years. Okay? They're making it sound like they were selling millions of people. No, they probably sold maybe 4,000 or 5,000 people in that 40-year period. You understand? Because that was not the biggest slave port in Africa, never, ever. But it's now being given that kind of a labeling. It's like they do with the Ashantis in Ghana. The Ashanti Kingdom don't get formed until nearly the end of the 1700s. All right. So the Ashanti, which then is engaging with the Muslim population in the north, don't start selling people into slavery until almost at the end of the 1700s. And it all ends within about 20, 30 years. So how are they this big enslaving thing? That's why we've got to study the history, and we've got to use timelines to see when these events were taking place. And then you also have to look at this whole question of prisoners of war and the African concept of what servitude was. You can get captured in a war in Africa, sold into servitude to another population, and become the king of that population, or married into the ruling family of the royal family. You didn't have to give up your religion. You didn't have to give up your name. You didn't have to give up your humanity.
Yes.
That's not slavery.
Yeah,
That's
a good point, because I saw that in the movie that a lot of those women who were from they were captives, but they became, part of the
warriors. I mean, soldiers. I want to say thank you to Katie Michelle. I know, you know what, Professor Small, you are one of my most favorite teachers. I don't know if I ever told you this. You the way you open up.
But thank you.
Well, because you really connect. I can connect with what you teach about spirituality, how you don't have to abandon, one spiritual program. I'm gonna say program because we have religions in as our people. We came here, we were indoctrinated, but you don't have to abandon a lot of that Christianity if you want to still practice your African spirituality, because we've been taught that.
We need to study so we know what we're doing.
Yes.
Let me show you, for instance, if I wanted to take Jesus, right?
Yes.
And make Jesus, I can't make him young because I don't want to get caught up in that space. But he's got 12 disciples. So let me just go back and show you, because they play games with us. You know the Last Supper, right?
Of course.
The picture, the Last Supper. And you got Jesus sitting there, right? In the center of the table, right? Then he has a halo around his head, right? But he's really raw. His brain is the sun. That's why there's a halo, all right?
Right.
So they've taken your concept of Ra out of Kemet, and they've shifted it to southeastern Europe. And they got this figure who represents Ra and Haru at the same time. But look around him now. He's got 12 people, 6 on either side. But look at the 6 well. And you see the 6 is in clusters of 4. And each of the clusters of 4 is only talking to one another, which is a group of 3. So what you're looking at is the sun and the 4th season and the 12 months evolving around the sun. They're discussing an ancient Kemetic solar drama, but you think it's the Last Supper because that's what they ran on you.
That's the esoteric. I got to get you back on so I can talk to you about.
Look at that picture again. You're going like, oh shit, they played us.
Yeah. Right? Speaking of looking at something, we kept you here way longer than you said you. I that's what I'm saying. I love you so much. You told me
the movie. I knew
30
minutes. Stay longer because I really appreciated the work of the people, those actors really. And I'm in the studio every day, sometimes 12 hours a day for the last 3 years. I
Consulting.
know the price the actors have to pay to do that work. And I know the battle I see between the Black actors and white and other directors. And I call it, I said that what the Black actors and actresses are doing, they're taking the European content and changing the intent.
Wow. Thank you. And I just want to, before we not wear out our welcome, but wear out your welcome, I should say. Is that right? Y'all know what I'm talking about. Before before you have to leave, I wanted to just end this stream with you on it. Just looking at a little bit of the trailer. I know we probably should have done this at the top, but because this is YouTube and I might have to edit it out, I wanted to wait to the end. So I'm going to just share our sister, the beautiful Viola Davis, and the producer talking about the movie, and we're going to just do look at a little bit of the preview. So 1 second. Everybody can see this, right, that I'm sharing, or no?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, let me take that off. Okay, I'm going to go in and share this. If you can't hear the audio, just say we can't hear it. Here it is.
In my dream as an actor, I dreamed I could be in a movie like this.
I learned that there was this true story, a female army that legit protected their kingdom, that legit beat men. It's like, why didn't I know this when I was a little girl?
They were the ultimate warriors. We fight or we die.
24/7 they trained. That's why they were so good. They outworked everybody, and they were stronger, faster, fiercer.
These were women who took great pride in being in this military unit.
They just represented everything heroically badass.
They were fearless. That's what made people revere them.
I think we should.
I had to show that. Wow. Wonderful movie. Thank you to Ahmed X. Oh, Ahmed X. I'm sorry. I'm butchering. Thank you, Ahmed X82, for the sticker and the $20 super chat. How did you like that? I mean, come on. If you haven't seen the film, go see it. I want to tell you something. I want to talk to Professor. One more thing. The dancing.
Yes.
Was it really like that? Was it like that, Professor? I mean, were they dancing too, or was it more stoic and serious with the Dahomey women?
If you've ever been to Africa, especially that area, Togo, Benin, Ghana, Nigeria, Togo, Benin especially, you dance to everything.
Okay.
And dancing is an essential part of keeping balanced human rhythm. I remember my first time in Togo and Benin was on my birthday, and I forgot what year it was. And Dr. Jeffries told somebody it's my birthday. And this one guy came with a little drum, and he starts playing this little drum under this tree. And 2 or 3 people start dancing in this circle around the tree.
Wow.
Well, that 2 or 3 grew to about 15, 20, 30. And so then they called me in. And I couldn't dance with a dime, but I was trying, you know what I'm saying? And I remember a little baby was crying. The lady couldn't get the baby. So I reached out and took the baby.
Aww.
When I took the baby stopped crying. So, that bigged me up like really big, right? And the dancing was beautiful because in Togo, we were up in the country. And I remember what shocked me is that the women were covered from the waist down. And so being from America, I'm trying to look away because I don't want to see the woman's breasts. But everywhere I looked, there was the woman's breasts. So I had to try to get my head from Americans' view and the other men. People were laughing at me because they saw me twitching and stuff. And so these young women is dancing around the street, and it was so beautiful. But let me tell you the beauty that hit me, and that's when it hit me, is when the old women with the sagging flat breasts started dancing. I never saw anything more sensual in my life. I'm talking women in their 60s, 70s, and 80s. Now I'm gonna say, because I'm turned on by these old ladies, right? I'm like,
How old are you?
I had to be in my late 30s. Late 30s.
Would you say it was because of the just the femininity of them?
Yes. It was the authenticity of femininity.
And the confidence.
Yeah, but that's what I mean by authenticity.
Okay.
The authenticity, the femininity wasn't prescribed to an age group.
There you go.
It was an energy. It was a spiritual energy.
Wow. Beautiful. Beautiful.
That woke me up to
Do
really
you mind?
African spirituality.
Wait, say that last part again. I'm sorry.
Question.
What did you say the last part? I'm sorry,
That
Professor.
woke me up to really wanting to study African spirituality. And that's when I really got into it after Togo.
Beautiful. May do you mind if we take like maybe 2 or 3 questions?
No, I'm here with you. I came after watching that movie. I knew I had to be a part of what you were doing.
I told you I love this king. He's a king. Look at, I love your hat. I got to get that hat for Sonnetter.
Yeah, someone gave me this a few months ago. I was speaking in South Carolina, and they gave me a shirt that says king.
Oh, I like that. But what is the symbol?
And so I thought I would wear it today because we're talking about the king, and we're talking about the woman king. And listen to me, who could deny the woman as king? We came from between your legs into this world. We came out of your womb into this world.
Well, Professor, there are there are very, very many men who would definitely deny us as king.
Ignorance and negative socialization has created the mindset we're dealing with. I love this movie because it's going to go a long way to counter the negative socialization process.
Right.
The theater has the power to do. And even after we're gone from these bodies, that movie will still be shown someplace. And it will affect somebody, somewhere.
Wow. Wonderful words of wisdom. If you want to come in, please come in, ask a question, make a comment about the movie. Shout out to King Simon. I saw you in the chat earlier. I don't know if you're still out there. So while we wait, I dropped the link. Peace to Latikia Bush. I see you out there, sis. And everyone else, Professor X. I can't name everybody. I got to focus here on this panel. But I love all of you for being here. And I'm sure you're really learning and enjoying. Go see that movie. I want to say while we wait for anyone who wants to come in, I want to ask Professor Small another question. What do you think about the representation of the love story with the man who she had the love interest, him being the child of the rape? So, oops, I don't really want to say that on the channel too much, but of the rape, where his mother was obviously a slave who was ravaged. What do you think about that? I wonder if that's going to get a lot of pushback.
I thought that was done well. W.B. Du Bois could have passed as a white man. Adam Clayton Powell could have passed as a white man. Booker T. Washington could have passed as a white man. My father-in-law, who I love, so one of the most African men I ever met, Sixto Tundu, could have passed as a white man, but he chose his African essence. And I think the young man in this piece chose his African essence.
Yes.
And then they played it out where he was willing to give his life making that statement,
Yes.
And I thought that was like really done well. Really done well.
Wow, that most powerful moment. I mean, like, not a spoiler because everyone on this panel.
Well, we already spoiled it. Just go see it anyway.
I mean, hopefully people coming in, they have seen it. But there is a, this movie chalked itself up, scene after scene for, an academy. Because, like, they really hit on, when you mentioned just the fact that his morality, his enlightenment came in that boat when his childhood friend had, in the midst of a war, basically, he wanted to still take his produce. He wanted to take his commodity.
Mhm.
Put him in that boat. He put them in the boat, and the body language was just amazing. How he had to make a choice right then and there.
Mhm.
The right thing to do. You know what I mean?
That was a powerful moment right there too.
That was so powerful.
Yeah.
It was so powerful.
Yeah, that was. I'm telling you, I was like when he drowned. Well, I don't want to get too much.
I know. I was thinking about that too, Naftali. When he drowned, that was so that was so much weight on that, because it's like, yes, you have released yourself from the connection.
Well,
that was
it's an enlightenment. It's like what we've been talking about. Thank you, Dr. Small. It's like where the education, your roots, where it comes from, right? She's bringing his mother back to the homeland, but at the same time, really coming into a real adulthood, right? What it means to be human, what it means to be forthright in the collective prosperity of our spirits. So that was so powerful.
It was. And remember, she gave him, when he gave her that knife, but she chose the knife, and she gave him Ogun. And Ogun, always remember, is transformation. He had said earlier, my mom sent me back to find myself, but I found you. That also spoke volumes. And the integrity of that is carried out to the very end, because he had come from the white world. He had grown up in the white world, but yet his mother was his heart. And we know that whenever our parents gave birth to us, they gave birth to themselves as us. And he found her there,
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a very powerful scene. How he, resonated with that past with his mom, and he buried her, but he went back and did her last wish was to visit to visit her country. So that was pretty powerful.
And remember, the king said to him when he explained the situation and said that he had buried his mother, he told him, "You've come home." And that's too was an important moment, because for a lot of us who live outside of the continent of Africa, we still don't know how to go home. We're still competing, them and us.
Yeah, well, I mean, because again, I was going to ask you a question: how the lineage can be really heard by the audience, because it is still Hollywood. We are still watching movies, right? And with the knowledge, I working with kids in inner cities, or working with kids who are not exposed to history. How are we to articulate that this is what's happening right here? It's not just like we need to go back to Africa, but it's also about like, how is it that in this continent we can come together as people of different places, and then make it known, like this is our collective conscience. Like this is what Martin Luther King talked about. Like we are powerful people, and this is our country as well. This is where we were born. This is where our kids came from. So how are we speaking to that? How are we telling our kids, when they're seeing this, the movie, what is it about freedom now? What part, because there's a lot of that comes through this. Like, what does freedom look like for those,
What hasn't happened in the African American movement with the mainstream middle class African American leadership is to understand that you're African. We never see a Chinese. We don't ask the Chinese what part of China they're from. They got as many tribes as we got. They got different language variations, but we just say Chinese. When it comes to us, the enemies have taught us to try to make these distinctions, which makes no sense because you just said it. And I say it like this when you listen to my lecture: the African Americans represent the largest cluster of African gene pool anywhere on the planet Earth. So we already united, but we need to understand that. Because not understanding that is forcing us to reject our grandmothers and our great-grandmothers and our great-great-grandmothers and all that they brought to us in terms of spirit, philosophy, history, guidance, and direction. For each one of us sitting here, we've got 2 grandparents, 4 great-grandparents, 8 great-great-grandparents, 16 great-great-great-grandparents, 32 great-great-great-grandparents. We're already back in Africa, all right? Most of our ancestors is in Africa, 99% of them. And that's what we have to teach. We are here in America. We built this. We've earned this. I ain't giving it to nobody. But I don't have to give up Africa to own America, okay?
Thank you.
That's the key. How do we let people know that we have this ancestral tree that go back millions of years and involve hundreds of millions of people that make up and inform the very cells in our body?
Thank you, Professor.
Is trying to teach us about.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you. Beautiful point. Look, I'd like to welcome to the panel the one and only Sotnetter.
Oh, the man who's going to answer his telephone when I call. Oh, brother.
Did you hear what he said, Sotnetter? You don't answer your phone.
I heard what he said. I heard what he said. Peace and black power to the panel. Great show, Nepal. You doing your thing, Queen.
I couldn't do it without the other people here.
Yes. I want to say peace and black power to everybody on the panel. Naphtali.
It's okay.
In motion, freedom, and Dulcinea.
Yeah, perfect.
And of course, the Grandmaster himself, Professor James Smalls.
Break the glass.
Oh man, you already know. So, Professor,
yes, sir.
Do any of y'all remember the chant that they were saying in the movie? Remember whenever something go down, they were saying a chant. Somebody was leading the chant, and they were
saying the name of their right.
Do you remember that? What was they saying?
A Goji, right? Weren't they, Professor?
Yeah. Well, there were multiple chants, but they were calling the description of their spirit. The Agojis wasn't just the person; that was a spirit. They were a spirit.
And Professor, you know what I thought about when they was doing that? I thought about the Hebrews and I thought about the Muslims, because the Hebrews, they would say a chant and everybody say Kwam Yashala, Kwam Ya, and then you have the Muslims Takbir, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Well, it was the same thing in Africa. We've been doing that a long time ago, because they were saying they chant and then they would come behind them and say the same thing, and I was like, wow, that's awesome. Now, what really made me feel that joy was the challenge. When the sisters, both of the sisters was challenged and she was repeating, she had to go back and save her sister. That's when I knew. I said, yeah, she gonna be bad. She gonna be great. She ran back to go get her sister, to help her sister come through that stuff, and she still won. So that right there was awesome. That part of the movie was great. And Apostle, I spoke to Apostle, right? And he was telling me he don't want to see the movie because too many people telling him this and that. I said, brother, you got to go see it for yourself, brother. Just like when you read in your Bible, you read in your Quran, you read in all these other books, everybody have their own interpretation and understanding. Go get your own understanding. They went to go see it. They didn't see, you can't tell them don't go see it. They took they behind to go see the movie. Go see the movie, brother. And I want to let all of y'all know Wakanda is coming back. Did you see the preview, Professor?
Yes.
Wakanda Part 2 is coming back.
A preview.
Yeah, that's going to be awesome right there.
let's not
happened?
take away from our people the reason for their skepticism now. Because movies have been used to murder us psychologically and psychospiritually. And so that we've been blessed that a few have come out in the last few years where Black actors and producers and writers have fought to put us on the screen in that medium that have such an enormous impact on the world's mind in a very positive way. But even I didn't want to see it initially because I got sick of people using some African sweets to suck us into some European poison.
Right.
It was after my sister pulled me into this program, I realized I couldn't come here and have a conversation with you not having seen it.
Beautiful.
And so when I went and sat in the theater, I didn't quite know what to expect. So I said, I'm just going to open my heart, open my mind, and absorb what comes my way and see if I can understand it. And what I saw was an extraordinary job done by some extraordinary people, most of whom were Black.
Yes.
Because I've learned from being in this industry over the last 6.5 years, there are even some extraordinary whites who will listen to you because they realize I don't know the Black story. I don't know the Black spirit. I don't know the Black experience. And so now there's some who are rejecting you, but there's some who say, no, wait a minute. Let's hear what Professor Small got to say, okay?
Yes.
And there's some who call and say, hey, we're factoring in what you said in that next scene, or we factored you into this episode. And then you realize that if you keep pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing, we're going to get a good bit of our story told the way we want it told.
Yes.
So it has the effect of our young people.
That is amazing. I mean, that is amazing because what really in the spirit brings us to the height of emotionalism is that this is a movie that it is an all Black cast. It is an all completely, I mean, it is also entertainment. Let's not forget, we're going to the movies. This is Hollywood, right? So within the Hollywood spectrum, this is the first epitome of heroism for Black women, for Black culture. And that isn't that
African Black culture.
Well, all Black culture, but like I would say, like in a broad, like literally, you go into the movie and you have been, and even Viola Davis has said it in many different interviews beforehand that yes, absolutely, it is not easy. Come on. It took 7 years just for this script to go into production. 7 years.
Let me ask Professor Small about that because he's been around Hollywood. Why do you think a lot of that is people were just rejecting that story, Professor? 7 years?
Let's forget Hollywood isn't a sign. Hollywood is that mostly white ethnic group that is dominated using the tool of the cinema to socialize the population. It's called what it is. It's called brainwashing. Okay. And so one or two ethnic group has been in charge of doing the brainwashing of this society, along with the government of the United States. The government of the United States put millions, tens of millions into Hollywood every year and have done it for decades.
Well,
they have a whole vision in the U.S. government that has to do with making movies, right? And then I'll let you come in, Sister Freedom. But the other piece is other ethnic groups have used the cinema to tell the story of themselves they want the world to understand. And they've also used the cinema to tell our story in the way they want the world to understand. So never forget A Birth of a Nation. Never forget, what's that one, Gone with the Wind, and so many others. They weren't accidents. They were deliberate. They were very deliberate. Hollywood is nothing but the technology of telling stories. Okay? Using technology to tell a story to masses of people that have the psychological impact that will make them believe this is true. And so if we can use the same tools to do the same thing, then I say use the tools.
Right. Thank you.
Just freedom.
What I was going to say is the fact is there is people that was asked to be on this movie and they declined because of the supposed slave trade by the sisters and
But
that
it's
particular.
understandable. We have been tricked so often.
But that's where you're going to run into a problem, and that's what I've been hearing all over YouTube too. Is that the movie? They're actually, I wouldn't have thought that our people would have said they was actually going to boycott the movie, but it's a situation where now our people are saying, well, our people meaning Black Americans and some Africans are saying that they're going to boycott the movie because of the slave trade that took place. What are you going to say in defense of that when people come at you or even come at anybody who was applauding the movie? And what are you going to say to them?
I'm going to tell them, don't stop playing. Stop playing.
Say what?
Ain't no in the hell that slavery could have happened without some complicity, whether forced compliance or voluntary compliance out of greed on the part of some of our people. That's real. We're doing it to our people even today. Neo-colonialism, Black collaborations, corporate structure, political structure, all of it. We're doing the same thing. And what we need to do is get deep enough in African culture. And I really love the way they try to deal with elements of the culture. You saw the piece with Ogun. If you don't understand Ogun, please study it. You saw the piece with Eshu Legba. You know, if you don't understand Eshu Legba, please study it. Those are political concepts, philosophical concepts, spiritual concepts that is at the root of African culture. And so when we begin to really ask the most fundamental questions, were some of us involved in enslavement? Of course. We'd be stupid to deny that. But the continent of Africa is bigger than Dahomey.
Right.
The continent of Africa is so big, you can put North America in there, all of China in there, all of Western Europe in there, all of Japan in there, and you still got space. So when they say you sold yourself, which one of the billion you're talking about was involved in that trade, all right? Let's define them and leave the rest of our innocent people alone. Because there were more African rebellions and defense and wars against slavery than you would care to try and record.
Right.
And in many of them, we were victorious. How many people know the Battle of Islamabad in South Africa, where the Zulu warrior, Secheweya, took on the British Army and killed 2,000 in one day and caused the fall of the Robespierre government in London as a result of that victory.
Right.
How many
break
people,
that glass?
right? No, Muhammad Ahmed in the Sudan, it was that 1854, 55, when he takes on the might of the British Army and the Arab Army out of Egypt, they sent 23,000 people and only took 3,000 back home.
Right.
All right. So we need to study history. It'll get rid of the mystery. And we'll know the difference between the collaborators and the heroes and heroines. I think this movie, because like I said, I was skeptical in the beginning and I didn't want to be ignorant while calling myself a teacher. So I got to go watch it. And that skepticism was wiped out because they did an excellent job in showing the transformation of a society that had been forced into a contradiction that involved selling their own people. And the movie is about how do we get out of this mess and come back to the humanity that we are. And they show the heroism of our women leading that thrust forward. I love that.
Yes, and bringing us back to this panel, like, because here we are, like YouTube, there's so many, like, there's so much commodity, you know, when we're talking about what is in slavery now, it's on what World Wide Web, right? It's not like, it's like how people are able to commoditize, like how they're able to cash in on people's consciousness and souls. So this is amazing, and I say thank you so much. I'm just privileged and
Yeah.
honored.
I'm excited
Let me
that
say,
we're
can I
having
say
some-
something?
Of course you can.
Let me say this, man. See, a lot of people, and I know the people that's going to be upset about this movie is a lot of Abrahamic faith people, because I've been watching them doing this, and they can't stand a woman being a leader of a group. It's like we don't know that this really happened. This really exists in the world. There's a woman by the name of Queen Nzinga, man. Go and study Queen Nzinga.
And Zinga was a king, not a queen, by the way.
Right. And go and study Queen Nzinga
He
and
said
see
a
how
king.
she.
She's a king.
Right. I heard that. Hold on, man. Hold on.
So
Go and study
Science,
Queen Nzinga. Go and study Queen Nzinga and see how she ruled in Ethiopia. She was a warrior woman. And one time, yeah.
No, you're talking about what's our queen in Ethiopia?
Talking about Nandi, maybe?
Oh, no. The empress that the predecessor of Haile Selassie. That's the one you're talking about.
No, he's talking about it. He's mixing up in Nzinga of Angola.
Okay, there you go. But there was a point, right? You're right, Professor. But there was a point where she even had to come back because the men didn't want to go out and fight no more. They was tired. And so she picked up the torch and she told them, if y'all don't come and fight with us, no, that's it. I'm saying you just got to go and do some research on this woman. You see, this is what I tell a lot of.
That's throughout our history.
Right, but this is what I tell a lot of our brothers and a lot of our Hebrews and Muslims, that we had warrior women, man. They wasn't just at home making pancakes and breakfast and cleaning the kitchen. They was out fighting. They had their babies on their back. Y'all forgot about this? Come on now, Professor, man. You got to tell them this history, Professor. They had their children on their back.
Okay, let me just bring that back to a check, because I know you like to play the Abrahamic thing and the da-da-da thing and the Hebrew thing, and I don't play that thing.
No, what I'm doing is real reality, though, Professor.
I understand some of our people are caught up in it.
Yes.
But I asked all of them who are into the Abrahamic tradition, what tradition were they in before enslavement? You know?
Yeah.
There was a couple of million years, or quite a few million years of African history before there was any kind of Abrahamic traditions.
That's true.
And so we're going to confuse a couple of thousand years with a couple of million years. Well, I don't. Key thing to understand. That's why I said put a timeline in history. The Catholic Church comes into being what? 1,000 years after the Ethiopian Church. Mm-hmm. The Protestant movement under Luther in Europe come into being when? 1,500 years after the Ethiopian and the Sudanic Church. Given that the Ethiopian and the Sudanic Church comes out of the North African Kemetic Church, which we now call the what do we call the church in Egypt? The
Coptic
Church, and what is now also called the Eastern Orthodox Church.
Yes,
but when the Eastern Orthodox Church evolved out of what is now called Turkey, the population of Turkey or Mitanni was black people. Okay, so what our people kept trying to do was to transform the African system to fit the social ecology they found themselves in. But when that social ecology gets taken over physiologically by invading force, they then take your system and impose it into their cultural framework. So that's what we're really dealing with if we want to have a true understanding of it. The moon is the moon today, just as it was 10,000 years ago. The sun does today what it did 10,000 years ago. The stars in the constellation does what it did 10,000 years ago. What happens in nature where the plant sucks up carbon dioxide and gives us oxygen has been going on since the beginning of time. African spirituality is an explanation of that sacred science of cosmology and ecology and our relationship in it.
I have a
Everything
question.
else is just a conversation at the periphery.
And I
Thank
do
you.
want a professor and you, Sonetta, since both of you guys are big teachers
That's
in
my
our
favorite
community.
son right there, Bob.
When it comes to having these colonizers accounts and historians, how do we research into different things? Do we throw them away completely, or do we use them to restructure our curriculum where we can actually teach the real accounts when it comes to the African history?
You use whatever tools you have that's available for you to use.
That was a good question.
Most Black persons in the United States did not become Christians during slavery. We weren't even, they didn't even trust us to have that much access to Christianity. In certain places that slavery would end, you would see, like in Philadelphia and Boston and New York, the first thing they did was try to indoctrinate us in Christianity. But the overwhelming majority of us don't go into Christianity until after 1865. Why did we do it? There was no other option. It was the only deal in town. Okay? So the church became our sanctuary. A sanctuary is a place where you're safe to conduct yourself in a certain way that your enemy isn't able to destroy you, inhibit you, or restrict you. And so we took everything African about ourselves and buried it in the church
And
and used it in any way we could as we went along.
and let us not just not recognize the fact that the spirituality, the sense of even in the movie at the very end, the priestess, the use of bringing it back to the altar, bringing it back to the ancestors. That is something that is infallible. You can't touch that on a
Right.
spiritual level, right? So no matter where you go, ship, plane, rocket to Mars, this is ingrained in our genetic code. So we know either like the indigenous people here in North America, which some of us have come from, and then mixed with the indigenous cultures of the origin of humanity, which was Africa. That is a powerful structure. That is what we bring to the table. So let's not, not bring that out. It came out in the movie, the very last, scene, but throughout that, there's a sense of power, connectivity, and people.
Just remember, the key in African culture is not some stuff we just made up.
Okay.
It is studying the universe, the cosmology, meaning the things that are not on the planet Earth. Remember, we're spinning in outer space just like Mars and Jupiter. We're a bunch of aliens too. Okay? And so everything that's not on planet Earth, we call it cosmology. We're in the cosmology. All the rest of the planets and the stars and the suns and other things and meteorites flying around and about, we're in the midst of all of that. But that has a rhythm to it. It has a vibration. It has a continuity and a consistency. And it is that we study. We create astronomy so we can understand those movements and how it affects our lives on a daily basis. Then we created astrology to explain it to our masses. So we can understand that. And then there's the nature of the earth itself, the Geb, the ecology that we live in, the pharmaceuticals, the herbs, the healing elements, the things we nurture, the water that keeps us alive, the food that gives us the nutrients we need comes from this earth. It is an understanding of those two things that is called African spirituality or African sacred science. It's not something we made up. What we see when we see altars and shrines we see a representations of the concepts, ideas, and principles of those things being paid respect, being paid homage with the libation. You know, even that sword that's laying on that shrine, because that sword is used in the defense of the integrity of the freedom of that community, is worthy of life. That steel that is made of has a vibration in it. It don't stop vibrating because I made it into a sword. It still has a life. It's still talking to me. You see, it has a pulsation. You know, and so that liquid I'm pouring has a life in it. It is not dead.
Yeah.
And so bringing those vibrations together to celebrate an act that they're responsible for that restored harmony, balance, and integrity is an essential statement. And I was glad they ended the movie. Sister, I'm glad because I forgot to mention that. So I was glad they ended it with that.
Yes.
Because it says something fantastic about the people who put this piece together and respecting the integrity of African spirituality.
That's right. That's right.
Right. And I want to say this before, and speaking of ending, we have reached the moment that most people didn't want to see come. I'm one included, the end of the show. Of course, thank you to Professor Small, but I do want to add this part to the people who aren't African. If you're not of African descent, I think there's a program, I don't think I know, on society that, you know, we you know, this isn't for us. Now, let me make a point. Let me be clear, though. Some people come in and they're culture vultures, and they just steal it away. But I'm talking about when you approach it respectfully, you know who it belongs to, you know where it comes from. I don't know if I'm going to get an echo from what I'm about to say, but anyone of any culture, know the power that we have, know the royalty that we have, and the spirituality that is really the core of and the foundation of a lot of, if not all, spirituality that's out there. Okay, so you can approach African spirituality and culture, but you need to do what Professor said. You need to stay, you need to study, you need to know what you're looking at, you need to know what you're doing. And so I'd like to see if Professor agrees with me. Should we just say to everyone who's interested, come research our people, research who we really are, not what you've been taught that we are through the slave program. You know, research who we are, but don't try to steal our culture. What do you think about that? Can you close out with the statement on what I said?
Yeah, but don't think of a people stealing. Let them steal it.
Yeah.
Why not?
Let them steal it.
Because all cultural systems in the world, all religious systems in the world come out of the African system. I'm talking about Hindu. I'm talking about Buddhism. I'm talking about the Japanese Shintoism. Ooh. If you go into the greatest shrine of Japanese Shinto, yes, you'll see the little yellow Buddhas out front, and you'll see the brown ones inside, but in the sanctum of the inner sanctum, they're always black as midnight. Everybody who is honest know that.
With cornrows.
Everybody who is honest. There's no culture, the only culture in the world that is foundational is African. Everything else is a variation off of that.
Yes.
So with that said, I would like to say thank you so much.
Hold on, let me say something right quick.
No, I'm gonna pass it over to you. Everybody can close out. You want to go ahead first, Senator, because you're heading over?
Yes, what I want to say is I'm about to head on over to Senator Studios. I got a powerful show. What's that noise? I got a powerful show for y'all coming up. We going in right now as you speak. There's going to be a powerful discussion. And family, get on over there. Y'all know what y'all got to do. It's going down. It's going down on Senator Studios. Peace and Black Power. Love you, Professor. Yo, man, I saw you in front of my mom's house the other day. I went to go visit my mom's. Right. You know, I thought you was coming to get me or something, man. I seen you coming. I'm like, yo, what you doing around here? And you was right there in the director's seat, directing this movie coming up called The Godfather. I mean, you know what it is. What was it again? The Bumpy. Yes.
Yeah,
beautiful, man. So peace and Black Power to everybody.
Peace, Senator. See you later. Thank you. Senator, you didn't tell us what you were sipping on.
Oh, I was sipping on some red wine here. Some red wine. I ain't here to play.
y'all.
I'm not here to play. You see, I'm a little tipsy right now. I'm getting ready to get on over there and get it in.
All right.
I'm
Well,
sipping
you
on
take
some
care.
red wine.
All right, King. We will see you over there at
Peace
the
and
House
black
of
power.
Consciousness.
All
Peace.
Black
All
power.
right. I'm going to let Professor Small close out first, our honored guest. Please don't be a stranger to this platform and this show. I'm speaking for everybody. We love you. We love your knowledge. We love your wisdom and your experience.
It's about love. You do what you do because you love the divine within you. We are the divine having a human experience. I don't know any other way to say that. And if we want to break it down, each one of us is an expression of an aspect of the divine essence having the human experience. And as African people, we simply have explained that to the rest of the world. And the world have bit off what they are able to chew. The unfortunate thing, they took the piece they bit off and tried to force it on everybody else, instead of just chewing it and get the best, what I'm saying, nutrients they could possibly get. But I'm very thankful being among 5 African woman kings tonight. You are the king. Don't let nobody play you. You are the power. We came from between your legs. That is real. You are that aspect of the divine that creates.
Wow. Bless
The
you.
aspect of the divine that creates. Without that, there is no creation. Okay? So let's take the power that is your reality and don't get caught up in little futile discussions of non-reality. Just manifest who you are as the African Black woman, and then let the world respond to that. It's as simple as that. Here I
I'm
am.
getting all choked up over here. Talk amongst yourselves. I'm teary-eyed. Bless you. Love you, Professor
Peace and
James
blessings.
Small. Wait,
Peace and
before we let you go, talk to us. Where can they find you? A lot of us know, but a lot of us don't. And anything that your latest projects, just really quickly before you go.
Well, always you can contact me on ProfessorSmallAfricanWorld.com. And sometimes I catch up with my messages, and I do get back to everybody. It may take a few weeks, but I do. My email is AMPONSA3, AMPONSA3@gmail.com. My phone number is all over the place, so I don't even mind putting it out there. Because some days when you get more than 100 phone calls, life could get mighty busy. So I won't put the phone number out, even though it's out there. The 914-960-2693 since he started.
Well, you say you want to put it out. Now you're going to get 2,000 calls.
I actually put it on the internet. People call me all the time. I was looking at your tape and I saw your number. My name is George I get calls from Laos, from Australia, because people are looking at African spirituality as a way to find a way to themselves.
That's what I was thinking.
About finding the divine in you.
Yes.
It's not about me.
It's not about race either, right?
Finding the God in you. Because if you find God in you, you will recognize it in the other person who have found it in themselves. And that's who you make bond with. That's who you unite with. You understand? We make mistakes because we unite with what we get attracted to and what we get stimulated by, instead of uniting to what mirrors you.
Wow. Oh, I wish I don't have my soundboard going right, or I'd break the whole all the windows in the house. But anyway, thank you so much.
I'm just honored that you asked me to be here, and I'm honored that such beautiful
Honor is
things
mine.
have been here with me. I know the pain that you've been through over these past centuries. It's an extraordinary pain, but you are the creator of the human family. Don't stutter on that. Don't take a back step to that. Don't try to wonder if and how that. It don't matter what damn religion you're using. You're still the creator of the human family. You are the African woman. The first time God decided, or Allah decided, or Yemajah decided to be a human, it decided to be a Black woman. That's that. No one can change that. No science can disprove that. And you are that aspect of the divine that creates. Without that, there is no creation. Understand that. And then each one of us is the sum total of all of our millions or billions of ancestors that ever existed. And if you take it back to the core beginning, God itself, Allah itself, the divine itself is your primary ancestor. So when you got that straight, the rest is just elementary.
Yeah.
You know?
Wow, we can't. Okay, let's leave it at that. I want to say blessings to you, your beautiful queen. Oh, your woman king wife.
Yes, who I've been with for 51 years.
51
Who's
years.
downstairs asking, this is a long program he's on tonight. So,
We just love you very much. And I want you to have the I don't know if you're going to go check out the other stream. It's going to be a whole different vibe, y'all. But anyway, go check out Sonnetter, beating up on, bringing out the truth on all kinds of stuff. I'll leave it at that. So thank
peace
you,
and
Professor.
blessings. Love you. You know, remember,
Peace.
true love is like true freedom is to be shackled to your identity.
Wow.
Shackled to your identity. So peace
And
and
with
light.
that, peace to the darkest minds of the light. Wow, that was beautiful. Ladies, I'm going to let you close out with any, your feelings, sentiments, your final thoughts. I'm going to start with freedom at the top. You're muted, sis. Freedom has those soldier nails. Y'all don't even.
It does.
That was crazy because I was like, they had those nails back then.
They were like gouging them in their eye. Oh yeah, it was good. It was a good movie.
It was good. I'm gonna go see it more. I know all of us are gonna see it more than once. Freedom, go ahead.
I'm muted. Oh,
Yeah, I'm gonna take my daughter exactly. Go ahead, Freedom.
I had a wonderful time. I love Professor Smalls. And it was just a joy being on the panel with you sisters again tonight. Hopefully I'll see you all again next week.
And I love you.
I love you too.
Sis. And I love all the sisters. In fact, let me move on to the other beautiful, should I say kings now? No, that might get a little crazy. People be tuning in like kings. But yes, right on this stream, we will say kings. To the other king, woman king, I will let Naphtali go ahead and close out.
Yes, I'd like to thank you so much, Nepal, for allowing me to be on again this weekend and sharing this with you sisters. And also, Nepal, thank you. I never would have went to see that movie. Thank you for giving me, the gusto to go see it. It was an amazing movie, guys. Go out there and watch it. Professor Smiles brought a lot of good information to me I wasn't aware of. So yeah, I learned a lot on this panel. And I'd like to see you guys again next weekend. And shalom.
Shalom. Shalom to you, sis. And we will see you soon, woman, king, queen, /goddess, /mother. So anyway, all right. See you. If you want to stay on and when we close out, you can, ladies. But I'm going to just, you can see your way out, whatever. I'm going to close the stream after Dulcinea and In Motion go. Oh, okay. We will see you soon, Naphtali. Naphtali's going to go over there and see
what's going on.
Peek on the HOK with the madness. Oh, Lord. She's gonna be up on her throne in the clouds. No, just kidding. She probably is gonna go do what moms do, right, ladies? Everybody on here is a mother. Everybody?
Yeah.
Grandmother. I'm a grandmother.
No, you're not. You're 25. Stop.
A mother to the power of 2, to the power of 3.
That's what we're gonna start saying, huh? A mother to the power of 2. I know I'm gonna go look in on the HOK. That's why I said Naphtali is, but I don't know what people are doing. So Dulcinea,
yes,
did you hear what Professor Smalls?
Yes, I wanted to thank you so much for inviting me. Professor Smalls, I like to think of him as like our John Henry Clark. He's amazing to me. And like, it was just an honor to be able to speak with him. What I love is like, he embodies umoji or unity between Africans. So he even did a memorial statement to Prince Asiel, and then he talks to people in Zimbabwe, all across the diaspora. He's just so amazing and just speaks into unity and Pan-Africanism, which is something that's really big for me. I do want you guys to reach out. You know, I'm building my channel, so I don't have that yet for you guys to come, but that is to come. And I do represent the Mighty Hebrew University, so you guys be on the lookout because there should be some debates coming soon. So.
Awesome. You know, that's what Naphtali forgot to do. I'm gonna shout out her channel. Can you put the link to her channel too? What did you put links in the chat for you, Dulcinea?
Yeah, I can put that now. Hold on.
I'm gonna go ahead and share this link. You gotta go check out all the social media. Yeah, do everybody. Let me just go ahead and do this quick. Okay, so this is Naphtali's info. If you want to reshare it, my beautiful mods, some of the mods they work hard. They're gonna head over to the HOK now. They don't even get a break. Take a 5-minute break, y'all. 5 minutes. They're like, I'm going to bed. Okay, shout out to Max Bird. Can you reshare that information? But thank you, Dulcinea. Dulcinea, you put your stuff in there too, your info, correct?
I am. I'm putting it now.
Yes, and we can reshare that. Now, peace to Mighty Hebrew, Prince Charlandine. Yes, you are part of Hebrew University. I'd like to say that I am not officially in Mighty Hebrews University, but I'm one of his students. I'm definitely one of his students. So last but not least, in motion, counseling. Talk to us. Close out. Tell us where tell us where you want to be found. And we'll see you
I want to be found in this panel. I want to be found in what Dr. Small. After viewing this movie, which had a lot of different dialogue all over the place, as we are in social media. Mm-hmm. Go in person, take your body, sit in the seat. Okay, if you are any way. This I literally am honored, privileged to be with you. Queens. I can't even tell
kings. We're kings, y'all. We gotta say it. We're kings, Dulcinea and Freedom.
But I'm gonna. I literally. So yes, Hollywood says king, but let's not forget that we just witnessed a Queen Elizabeth II, 70 years in power, whatever power was in Britain, but that was in itself. It was a magnitude of, if you're like on social media, if you're any if you're plugged in, that was phenomenal, right? And we're not even in England, like we're like in America.
I didn't watch any of it,
but that said, this is what we're talking about. We're talking about as a mental health counselor. Yes, we are going back to our roots, but a lot of these kids are plugged into TikTok. A lot of the kids, they're plugged into what's going on now. So as much, this has been an amazing day.
Yes.
Remember that we are part of a lineage of morality, of loving each other,
when you talk about you're talking about our roots from what we saw, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm talking about dignity. I'm talking about what they're seeing on the,
it's all balanced, everything, the aggression, which Dulcinea, remember I taught that in my class about we don't have to be ashamed of that feminine energy that is the pure unadulterated flamethrower. So
the primordial energy and he spoke on that tonight, that beginning, that first energy.
Yes. And also the fact that the bars have been set by the Western ideology of what it is to be royal, what it is to be monarchy. It's about that the queen, the barrier, so in her life, she was dignified, right? There was no
She was seen on the front as dignified, but it's all just the layer underneath the surface. It's putrid, cancerous, toxic, destructive energy, right? I mean, is that what you're? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Is that what we're seeing? Do we see it
Yes.
on social media?
Yes. So what can we say? We're going to continue this for next time, or we could do a post show. We're going to close this out, but go ahead and finish closing out, letting us know.
But
where
thank
we
you
can
so
find you.
much for, literally, this is so beautiful in being with you all.
I wish I had some music, y'all. I wish I did. I got to get my music and my production up. I got to level it up. Yeah, because when you were saying that, I wanted to play like some really good music. Like that would be good. But thank you so much, Emotion, for being here with us. We will look for you in Emotion Counseling. In all seriousness, if you want to reach out, it is in the East Coast, New York area. So definitely glad to have all of these beautiful ladies here. Woman Kings, Freedom, you closed out. You didn't close out, Freedom?
No, I closed out. I was just,
because you turned your back. Okay, all right. They're like, go ahead and close out. Hey, okay. So, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Tune in next week and next Saturday. We're gonna have another great show, a Most High, Unfathomable, God willing. And that's it. Peace to the darkest minds of the light. Yes, go on and head on over there to Soundnetter Studios and see what's going on with the. I'm not gonna say that on my. I was gonna say the Bible name. I'm not saying that Bible name on my stream. Go check out what's going on over there with the Bible controversy. All right, peace and power.
Power.
The darkest minds of the light, and I'm not joking. Peace to y'all. All right, I'm closing out now for real.
Peace.
All right, ladies.